It's no small task, is it, to help Muslims understand God, but they certainly need to, and that's our job to bring them to God through Christ. We are talking about some of the attributes of God. Of course, He is sovereign in Islam, but there is love. There is no question. Let's not get the idea that for a Muslim, God is malevolent. He is out to get them. No, the Quran does talk about His love. There is that term, as previously mentioned, and it's in the Quran in 11 and verse 90, for example. It's the word al-wadud, or in 85:14. There it is, sitting right there, and if in fact it says full of mercy and loving kindness, wadud. So there are lots of verses like that, and then some Muslims would argue, well, you know, he is merciful and compassionate, and it repeats that over and over again. So it is there, but what's the difference? The difference is in Islam, whom God does not love. Whom does He not love? He does not love those who are not good. In direct contrast with the book of Romans, that while we were yet sinners, while we were alienated and not reconciled, God loved us. So that's a tremendous difference between God in the Bible and God in the Quran. What do Muslims say about God, or what are some of the things that are mentioned about Him? Well, there are lots of things mentioned about Him. We looked at some of them before, and in Surah 59 and 22 to 24, there are several things mentioned about Him. But often Muslims will say this. They will be limited. They will say God is one. Tawheed is the salient feature of God. He is one, and they'll hold up their finger. In other words, it's a mathematical thing. God is one. And chapter 112, Surah 112, is a favorite. It's almost like Psalm 23 for us. Muslims will use that, this surah, this very short one. Say He is Allah, the one and only. Allah the eternal, absolute. He begetteth not, nor is He begotten, and there is none like unto Him. So they'll repeat this. They'll throw it at us as if, in direct contradiction. They think that we are talking about God begetting a son in a physical sense, which we're not. They'll also say that God is powerful. It says over and over in the Quran that He is all powerful. All powerful. There is no one like Him. And that we can agree to. This is a long verse, but right at the end it says, then know that Allah is exalted in power, wise. Another thing that they can say, and will say with most solemnity and seriousness, that He is will. I've mentioned before that when it comes to salvation, the bottom line is not what you do or how good you are, how many times you say your prayers in Islam, but it's what does this God decide to do? What did He decide to do? His will is the final word. For example, in this long verse, 74:31, at the end it says, thus Allah leave to stray whom He pleases, and guides whom He pleases, and none can know the forces of thy Lord except He. It's very deterministic. Predeterminism, as we'll see later on. Some Muslims might also say this, that God is absolute ruler, He's absolute justice, He's absolute mercy, and then absolutely unknowable. Al-Ghazali, the greatest Muslim theologian that has ever lived, and died in 1111, makes this point, that God is absolutely unknowable. Let that sink into your minds. But it's true. That's what Muslims say. Now He is the creator. Not clear in the Quran how many days it took, whether it was 4 or 6 or 2 days. It's a little bit confusing there. If you look at all of those verses, we can't do it. We can't take time to look at each one of them. But maybe it doesn't really matter. In other words, the point is Muslims believe God created the heavens and the earth. It doesn't matter how many days he did it. We're not going to fight with him about that. God is in their liturgy. And oftentimes, when Muslims will write to you a letter, they will start it with 786. They do it. They did it and still write sometimes in Urdu or Arabic or whatever, 786, and that stands for God. This they apparently took from the Byzantine Church. This you know, they never started a letter with dear Warren, I'm talking to you about, want to talk to you about something like that. It's always the flattery stuff first. This is very Middle Eastern, and Muslims picked this up from the Byzantine Church, and they picked up some of the other things too. That's quite rigid. Another thing is that God is very much in their ritual or attitude. They're always saying, Inshallah, if God wills, or something like that, or Bismillah, in the name of God. You can see it in the Quran. That's not a bad thing either, because it does say in James that you know, you don't say that you're going to do such and such. You should say that if God wills. So Muslims are not far out that way, but they do say it almost unthinkingly, because they're saying it all the time, and sometimes it seems like they say it so that they don't have to keep their own commitments. In other words, they'll make a promise to please you, but then they'll say Inshallah, and they won't keep the promise, and that apparently is God's fault. The interpretation of the Trinity and Muslims, here we run into difficulties, because Muslims look at the Trinity as shirk, or adding partners to God. We have mentioned these things before, and the question is how do you deal with them? The verse that we're thinking of here is 4171. It talks about Jesus, and by the way, the Quran talks a lot about Jesus. I think about 93 references to him. It says here that he is the son of Mary. He's no more than a messenger of Allah, no more than Rasul-e Allah, and his word, which he bestows on Mary, and a spirit proceeding from him. So believe in Allah and his messengers. Say not Trinity, desist. It will be better for you, for Allah is one God, glory to him. Muhammad never understood the Trinity. He missed it. And as a result, Muslims today, even though they should be, because should understand it, because we've talked to them a lot about it, they still seem to misunderstand the Trinity and think of it as three gods, Father, Mother, and Son. In 5:17 it says, in blasphemy indeed are those who say that Allah is Christ, the son of Mary. Say, who then hath the least power against Allah, if his will were to destroy Christ, the son of Mary, his mother, and all everyone that on earth, for to Allah belongs the dominion of the heavens. So Muhammad thought that this was just heretical, and it could well be that the reason Muhammad misunderstood the Trinity was because of the heretical doctrines floating around at the time and just before Muhammad. Remember that the councils in Ephesus and Chalcedon and so on were often having to do with this. And Muhammad didn't understand the Trinity. And so you'll see this over and over again. 5:72. They do blaspheme who say, Allah is Christ, the son of Mary. Thus said Christ, O children of Israel, worship Allah, my Lord. And then it says in verse 73, they do blaspheme. This is kufr, blasphemy, who say Allah is one of three in a Trinity. You see, they don't understand the Trinity. So God help us to be patient, because it's a misunderstanding. The point is, how then do you handle this? Let's now think about some of those things. Remember that in the opening verses of the Bible, God is there. In other words, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. God's Spirit was there. because it says the Spirit of God hovered over the face of the waters, and God's word was there. God said. Another verse that is relevant here is in Matthew, where Jesus says, make disciples, baptize them in what? The names? No, the name, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So God is one. And there are other things too. In Matthew, it talks about the son of David, the son of Abraham, the son of Mary. 3 names, but it's only one Messiah. I don't know whether all of these help or not, but we're using some of them. I don't know that they do help all the time. But I think the point is that in reference to Muslims, we don't correct them as much as we engage them patiently, lovingly. Something like Jesus worked with Nicodemus, helping him along in his thinking, even though he was the teacher. He said, don't you understand that a man must be born again? So we tell them stories, we engage them patiently, lovingly. We talk to them, and, this is what happens in the Bible too, God's story. Some of the things in the Bible, I think, help Muslims to understand God. In the Bible, he's walking with Adam and Eve. He's fellowshipping with them. In the Quran, this is not so. There's no relationship. But one thing we don't do, at least it doesn't seem to help much, is use our little pet illustrations. We love these illustrations. 1 + 1 + 1 = 1. Muslims ridicule those, and they don't cut any ice. So let's avoid them. Let's not use some of these little illustrations of the Trinity, and even using creeds, such as came out of the the various creeds that the Christians came up with. Those creeds don't always help either. But we can help Muslims sometimes by asking them questions, such as, who's running the universe? Well, God walks with Adam and talks with Adam and sews skins and one thing is another, so that they can somehow think out of the box. The creator of the universe is in the garden, and yet at the same time he's keeping the planets. Muslims don't think in this way, but nevertheless we're trying to help them. He is in one physical place, and yet he's everywhere, and so we do that. Now there is one thing too that this is Muslims seem to accept this. By and large they believe in an uncreated Quran. In other words, the Quran is eternal. It was with God forever and ever. There are some who've disputed this, but Sunni Muslims by and large think this way. They call it the mother book. It's with God. It's besides God's. It's along with him. So if Muslims can believe in that there is an eternal Quran up there, eternal word, why is it so hard to believe in Jesus, the eternal word, with God? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. It's not. And then another difference here is in reference to the intimacy of God. We've talked about that. God is an intimate God. He is comes to seek and to save that which was lost. He is the good shepherd. He searches for the sheep. He loves them one by one. And there is so much intimacy in the Bible over and over again, just the way that God works and deals with Elijah, for example, in 1 Kings 19, shows his intimacy. Don't you love those passages where God zeroes in and deals with people in a most intimate way? He talks with me, and he walks with me, and this is what our God is like. He's not just the all-powerful, transcendent one. He is intimate God. That's one of the differences. And God is a suffering God. Notice these characteristics, these that show the significance of our God. Yes, he is all-powerful, but God suffers. Doesn't he? When Jesus stopped Saul of Tarsus in his tracks, what did he say? Saul, Saul, Why do you persecute me? Is it possible? I think it is possible, and it's true, that God feels the blows of his persecuted church. He suffered on the cross. That's true. But he still suffers because we're one with him. And then God is a loving God. His character is love. It's not that just that he acts lovingly or chooses to act, which is more or less Muslim theology. No, he is love. That's his character. And he acts according to his character. And he's knowable. This is the will of God, that you might know him. This is what Jesus said all through the Bible. We're encouraged to know him personally. And then he is holy. It's not just that there is one name, such as the 99 names of God, but over and over again, the theme of the Bible is God is holy. Be ye holy, for I am holy. Through the sacrifices, through the various rituals of the Old Testament, you see over and over again, God is holy. And because he is holy, he has to deal with sin the way that he does. Would that God would help us. Now, help us in our understanding and our growth and our love for him and appreciation of him. We're all on a journey, aren't we, in getting to know God better. Now, here are some things about Allah in the Quran that are worrisome. In the Quran, 28 and 56, it says, Allah guides whom he, what? Will. And he knows best. So there you have it again. You see, it's his will. One day we will ask hell, are you filled? Quran 50 and verse 30. So you get the impression that God is not so concerned whether people are saved or lost, but here he is wondering if hell is filled with, and it says, in another verse says, we'll fill hell with men and jinn, men and spirits. If we had so willed, we could have guided everyone, the Quran says in 32 and 13. And there is this concept of predeterminism. Some to heaven, some to hell, and I care not. It is a divine fiat. God decides. In fact, it says, Allah guides whom he will. He knows best. Quran 28:56. One day we'll ask hell, are you filled? I've already mentioned that verse. If we had so willed, we could have guided everyone. When God creates a man for paradise, he employs him in doing the deeds of those who will go to paradise. When he creates a man for hell, he employs him in doing the deeds of those who will go to hell, according to the traditions. The man whom God guides is rightly guided, but those whom he confounds will surely be the losers. We have predestined for hell numerous jinn and men. So one wonders and questions and can reflect on this. Is God morally responsible or not? And if he cannot suffer, can he love? These are some of the questions we have. His attributes, says Kenneth Craig, in Islam, are understood as characteristics of divine will rather than laws of divine nature. His will is irresistible. This is basically what I've been saying, that his will is the bottom line. It's not that his character is love and holy and so on, but he does act lovingly and he acts justly and so on. This is a difference. The question is, do Muslims box God in? Do they contextualize him and so reject the cross? We must help Muslims get beyond the mathematics of God to his character. We don't worship the number one, we worship him. To close with this story of one of my friends, Steve Johnson, who would turn to Islam out of Roman Catholicism when he was in university, won to Islam through some very skillful, patient Muslims, and he was a Muslim for about a decade, working very hard in Islam and for the Muslim Society, the Islamic Society of North America, ISNA. editing one of their magazines. And then, according to his story, he had a depression. And he said something like this, God, I need you. But he read in the Muslim theology by Muslims themselves that we don't have that privilege of knowing God and needing when we need him, because it says all we have is his will. We don't have him. And then upon that realization, and when it really hit him, then Steve Johnson turned to God of the Bible, was converted, saved, and has been gloriously living for Christ ever since, and comes and teaches a class for us here during the summer every year. So here again you see the importance of his of getting to know God personally and having him help us in our needs.